Welcome to Azure Infinitum Podcasts. It's your host, Reika Fukushima from the Azure Infinitum community. Here with us today we have Mistithgar, Nora, and Glitch from our community with us. We are planning on talking about a FF14 retrospective discussion going over the last 10 years for the anniversary that's coming up here next month. And we've also got FanFest right around the corner for FF14. This is the bi-yearly, or wait, is it classified as bi-yearly if it's every 2 years, or is that twice a year? I think it's twice a year. Well, we'll just put it this way: it's about every 2 years for the expansion launches. And there is going to be a North American Fan Fest, a European Fan Fest, and a Japanese Fan Fest, all in the span of what, about 6 months from each other, something like that, give or take. And these events typically will announce the new expansion, followed by some keynotes from producer Naoki Yoshida. And we will get quite a bit of lore. Always love lore. And we are going to see some awesome stuff, some previews of the next Threshold, the exciting new adventure they've been working on. Producer Naoki Yoshida has been promising the next 10 years of content, which means that the next expansion is actually going to start that new main story that's continued from where we're at. We're kind of at a bridge right now, you could say, with the current patch. It's like leading into what's coming next year. And so that means for our community here in Azure, we are gearing up for what is to come. We've got another patch, patch 6.45 just launched, about 3-4 days ago. It's launch week for 6.45. We've got the new Manderville weapons. We've got the Splendorous tools. The Mount Rokon, I almost said deep dungeon. It's not a deep dungeon. It's a Criterion variant dungeon, which is out now, which is really nice from what I've seen of it. And a few other nice fixes and changes and things like that. We're all pretty excited about that. There's some nice new minions and mounts that are out. And all of our events are currently running raids. The current rewards for our Time-Worn maps, our Wondrous Tales. We've got the trials for Zervin Unreal and Golbez Extreme, which is not the name of the trial, but that's the bosses. Little bit of a spoiler there, sort of.
Spoiler warning used to go before this point.
Probably put a little bit of editing there. But yeah, so here we are in patch 6.45, looking forward to patch 6.5, the finale for the Endwalker patch series. Now, an interesting thing that's going on here, guys, is we normally see the 6.3, or sorry, the 0.3 patch is usually the point in which the story starts kind of finalizing of whatever the current expansion is, just like with 5.3, what we saw there in that patch. If you know that content, you fight a very special battle. I won't say who it is, at the top of Crystal Tower at the end of Shadowbringers. In the 4.3 patch, it kind of concluded the events of Stormblood more so, and when we start getting into the 0.4 and the 0.5s, it starts leading towards the next the next big adventure. So we are seeing some very interesting turns in the story. But what's strange is that Naoki Yoshida also commented, was a few months back in an interview. I think it was with was it Famitsu? I'm not totally sure, but he did mention that the 0.5 patch this time would be the one not the 0.3. So the 0.5 will be the one that is going to give us the ultimate clue of exactly where we're going in the next expansion. So that's all very, very exciting, and that means we're only a few months away from knowing that information. But next week for North American Fan Fest 2023, we're going to see something. We're going to see the name of the new expansion coming out, expected Q1, maybe Q2 of 2024. We'll see. I don't think we're going to get a release date next week. But as soon as we know, we will we'll be talking about that quite a bit. We've got a fan festival channel set up in our Discord, so all of our members are welcome to chat there, share maybe photos if you go to the event, if you're one of the lucky ones that got into fan festival. There's going to be quite a bit of news and information. There's information that's coming out from FF14 and from Fan Festival that we're going to be sharing there, as well as details when they're announced at the show next week. And don't forget, you can in fact watch the show, even if if you couldn't make it out there to the actual show, which very limited tickets for convention. But we are going to be able to watch it on the stream. So links will be in the channel, as well as across our community, because I'd like to announce something very special here. It has not been announced yet on our Discord at the time of this recording, although I think some of our attending council members here might know what's coming. Maybe actually all three of you should probably know. It's a tradition of ours. The Fan Festival,
but you also did announce it already.
Official watch party for Fan Festival 2023. So if you've been in our community more than a couple of years,
screenshots of Yoshida-san.
Ricky, you do realize that you've actually had the channel open for like a month now, with a ping to everyone saying, "Hey, it's coming up."
Yes, but the channel itself is talking about FanFest. I didn't announce the details of our watch party, which will include various flash raffles and maybe a few other surprises. So look out for that post and some of those details to come soon. At the time of this recording, we are very, very close to our next Azure Grand Assembly, so we'll also be talking about it a little bit more there as well. So with our Azure Fan Festival watch party on the horizon, we will get the chance to raffle off some awesome stuff. Maybe we'll even have a chance to do a like a group photo with the new G-Pose anniversary stuff that's out, and then experiencing the announcements is really exciting. So if you're listening to this episode and you're excited about next week and you want to know where we're going next year, and you want to experience all that fun as soon as it's announced with the FC while we're watching live, definitely tune in next week during the Fan Festival 2023 stream, and the Azure Fan Festival watch party is going to be awesome. And I know when we first did this in 2014, we weren't even Azure yet. It was a group of folks that would come to be Azure founders, including our resident Mima, Nora Skylock.
I love Mima.
And we were watching the announcement of Heavensward, and we were like, oh my god, what is an expansion for 14 even going to be like? And we were blown away seeing Flying for the first time, and Ishgard, and all of those areas that came out in Heavensward. And it's a lot of good memories of that time, just wondering and being excited. There were people saying we're gonna fly on dragons together, and now today that's like just an afterthought, but like it was
flying on mini
super
dragons,
yeah, and it was a super exciting thing back then, to think about that. And then there we go, like we've done it for years now. It's amazing.
I like that we fly on giant cats now.
We giant everything. We got turtles, cats,
Vomit
dogs,
turtles.
everything you can think of. Yeah. But with Fan Festival, what was it, the one that announced Stormblood, was very, very, very special for Azure, because not only did we kind of ramp up our watch party after being Azure for a couple years by that point, we also had our very own press team that actually went to the Frankfurt Fan Festival in Germany. And this memory is a very special memory of ours as a community. I know Some folks, you know, here we're not there back then, but it is something we did as Azure, so it's definitely a part of our history. We were able to get a couple commissions done from some very nice artists. One was in a Yoshitaka Amano inspired artist. So if you're familiar with Amano's work, he does a lot of the old Final Fantasy character and monster designs and things, and then he'll do the logo for every. He's the one that does the logo, that fancy art style. And then sometimes he'll do like a special piece for each game now, because he's not the main designer, like he was in the first few games way back when. So there was an Amano inspired artist that did an Amano picture for Azure, and then there was another artist that did another couple commissions. Plus, we had a plaque made full of screenshots of many of our gatherings over the first few years of Azure, with some messages to the developers in English and Japanese on it. And I kid you not, it was hand delivered to Naki Yoshida and Koji Fox during an autograph signing event. And they were actually blown away at first, because when they saw the Amano one, they stopped and actually said, "Is this one of ours?" They were like, "Is this one of our art pieces?" And I told them, no, it's not. It's not yours. It's something that we did on our own and themed it just like Amano, but we wanted you guys to have it with this plaque. And so they were blown away that we had actually made them that. And a lot of the gifts that they receive at fan festivals, they take back to their office in Shinjuku. So. Over at headquarters where Division 3 is, somewhere is the Azure plaque. And another fun one from that fan fest is the fact that our press team got the very best photos online of the moment that Soken, Yoshida, and the old president Matsuda won the Guinness record for 14. There was 3 different Guinness records, and one of them was the what was it? It was the most soundtracks or songs for a soundtrack ever recorded in a single video game, is what Soken won, and that was at the time of Stormblood, like before Stormblood's soundtrack was out. So that was Heavensward and ARR combined. That didn't count everything that came post Heavensward or post patch. What was it? 3.4 back then, I think it was 3.3 or 3.4 at that time, and so that was then. Now I can only imagine, because there's probably over 1,000 tracks composed for 14 at this point, I would have to guess. And so he won that back then. So the Guinness people, have you ever seen anyone win a Guinness record? They have like these guys in suits that are present, that are part of the Guinness Guild or whatever, and they come out and give a plaque to whoever. Yeah. So they did that. They were there, and we were right there. And I told one of our press guys, I was trying to coach them, because they were really new at doing this sort of thing. So I told them, I was like, just be bold, like just go up there. And like, I'm not supposed to cross this line, and I'm like, no, you got to cross the line and just get the picture, because like this is the once in a lifetime moment here. And so he did, and he got like some really super good pictures, and they went out on the internet, and we got the closest shots of them when they won their awards. So that was really special. And Uematsu was actually there on the second day, and so I had an old 1988 FF concert CD that I sent to get autographed by Uematsu, and it's like one of my most prized collectibles. But that was a FanFest memory for us, because that very FanFest was when Shirogane got previewed. And so the really cool thing was that here's Azure doing the watch party together, and then Azure's actually present in Frankfurt, Germany, giving the plaque, taking the pictures, and all this stuff. And so that probably was one of the most special FanFests that we had together.
That's really
pretty
cool.
Awesome stuff. Yep.
I'm really jealous of like the Uematsu autograph.
Yeah. That was something I had aspired to get for a very, very long time. I had a friend I had trusted to get one for me one time, who missed out on it, simply because he didn't. I kept telling him, you got to check the email for the press release. It's going to have the details for press members in it, and he just completely ignored it, and we missed out on the autograph. And so the other time I was like, okay, we have to do this now, and it was pretty exciting. Other than that, we had another one for Shadowbringers, another Azure Watch Party, where we got to see Shadowbringers together. And while we weren't on the scene as much as we were during the Frankfurt one, which that's the EU one. So we did actually do one for NA as well. But the EU one is where we got to give them the plaque and everything. It's pretty crazy. Crossing continents to meet these guys. And the press tours too. We must not forget that the press tours are also really super exciting, and those begin right after the fan festivals start and stop. So starting next year, I think the Japanese one is in January, first week of January next year. Following that, Naoki Yoshida and Koji Soken and probably a few other guys, and probably the new president. That's the new president kind of cracks me up. He's a funny dude. They're probably going to be on a press tour. So we would normally see them at E3. They usually would set up a battle challenge at E3 for a day or two, because they do a Square Enix Presents live stream as well as battle challenge. So the very last time, though, because E3, we all know what's been going on with that for a minute. We don't have E3 right now. But in the past, the very last one was the Titania, the Titania, whatever, however you say her name, Titania for Shadowbringers EX Battle Challenge. And we got the shirts and saw Yoshi. The funniest thing, though, is when they go to PAX East first, and then they show up over here on the West Coast. They also do a press release in San Francisco. So when Shadowbringers was on the post Fan Festival press release, they rented out this little like gothic bar and decorated it with like black and purple lighting for Shadowbringers. And they had all these kiosks where you could play like some of the fights from Shadowbringers for the press team. It was super cool. And we had Foxclon. God, what was his name? I always forget his actual name because everybody calls him Foxclon. It's the guy with the like silvery spiky hair. Who always sits next to Yoshi during the live letters.
Morbingway?
Yes, Morbingway, exactly. Yeah, the guy Morbingway, the one who always dresses up. And you know what's funny about that too?
I hate that I know
It's almost been a year. Yeah. He was a Loperite during the 14-hour broadcast for the anniversary last year. Well, that's coming up again. That's coming up in like a month. So he was a beaver 2 years ago, a couple years ago. Last year he was Loperite, and it was amazing.
A beaver.
Yeah. He was the beaver. He not only was the beaver, he had little plushy beavers of the not just any beaver, but the 14 beaver. And the golden beaver, and he had a bunch of them like on a wire, like sticking out of the beaver. So there was like beavers floating on like wires off the costume while he was a giant beaver. It's really hilarious. You should look it up. And so I'm wondering, what is he going to be this year? Because every single anniversary stream, he's a different monster or creature from 14. But anyway, we had that guy Foxclon. We had a picture where he was holding a little pin with the Azure crest on it, and him and Yoshi they went from Frankfurt to Boston for PAX East. Then they showed up on the press tour here on the West Coast, and we had different sets of members that were actually that same year they were able to actually bump into them and get pictures with them. And one group that was at PAX East, they had Azure t-shirts made. And then the ones over here, when we met up with them, the funny thing is they finally recognized that we had met up with them at like 5 different points across 3 continents. And they were like, oh my God, these guys are everywhere. Who are these guys? And when they said that, it was really funny. So it was like being, it was like Senpai noticed us, basically. So it was fun fan festival / press tour stories. So wanted to share that for the podcast. But looking back on 10 years of A Realm Reborn Plus here, whoo boy, I know we all have quite a bit of memories.
That's Jesus.
Yeah.
Honestly, the newest patch stuff, like the Manderville stuff, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's what I hear. Oh I hear there's an actual.
I haven't had a chance to do it yet.
Everything that you've questioned about the Mandervilles.
Really?
I've seen some of what you streamed, and I'm more confused than ever.
So it's really going into like detail on their origins and stuff like that.
The origins don't make sense.
The origin story makes so much more sense.
Does it? Oh crap! Well, I can't wait to see that.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see that soon.
Like, it doesn't make sense, but I'm just like, did they just do this do this to this person. Oh my god. I wish I could say it.
Oh yeah, I definitely haven't experienced it yet. Now I think I'm
not gonna say it then.
You three who are here with me on the episode, you three have all started in 2019, if I'm correct, or 2020.
I started January 2020 is when I got dragged into Azure.
Okay.
I started in 2018 when Nora dragged me in.
Oh, okay.
I must have been 17 then, because I remember Stormblood launch. I was still very much a Sprout at the time, but I remember one day it changed over from the Heavensward logo screen to the Stormblood one. I'm like,
oh, okay.
Wait, what's this?
So you've been around. So Nora, you've been around longer than I thought you were, because I remember when I remember the day you were recruited. I remember the very day.
It took you a couple of years to find me, Rick.
I may have started the game in 2018, but like I don't think I joined until maybe like the November of 2018. No, not November. That's when I moved to where I am now. But like, maybe I did join Azure in 2019, but I definitely played in 2018.
I'm pretty sure you joined us in like somewhere to mid to late 2019, because I know Nora was with us first, and that's why I thought that she had started and then dragged you in.
Yeah, but, Nora had to convince me to join a guild because I'm like, no.
Yeah, no. Every other time she's been a solo player.
Oh, okay.
That's a lie.
Okay, no, I haven't been a solo player. I've been a guild leader.
You were
really?
a guild leader in Grand Fantasia.
Yeah, I was.
No, it was Kasha.
And then I ran off and started my own.
All right, take it to the den, you two.
I will fight you.
So going back to so Nora. It sounds like Nora was here the longest out of you three. So
yes.
So Nora, and then Glitch, and then Misty. And in the time that you three have been with us in Azure and also in 14, you've at least been here long enough to see expansions change and kind of see the game get updates and changes over time. You've seen what was current content become older, unsyncable stuff that you can go in, fly in, and get it clear real quick, and things like that. And the interesting perspective over the years, because as the expansions pile up, time passes, and you just end up kind of feeling like you're like the way I feel. Like I'm like this old sage just watching time pass through this world.
I remember my first interaction with you that I had.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Like it was my first time fighting Ifrit, and I'm like, hey, I could use some help fighting Ifrit.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then like you partied me because you're like, yeah, let's go. And then, like, I blinked and then died. I'm like, what happened?
Yes, I do remember that, because I remember it's a very specific memory where I remember I have fun popping in and just doing that for, lower level players or newer players that don't know that much about unsyncing, and they're just like in awe, and it's always a fun reaction. So I do remember you at that moment. That was funny.
I vividly remember that being.
It was like yesterday.
First time that I met you.
My first introduction to unsyncing was when Lagnus dragged me through coils.
Oh yeah, I remember that day.
Oh boy, that reminds me now.
It's you, Lagnus, and someone else. Who was the other person?
I thought it was either Nora or Osh.
But yeah, Osh. It might have been Osh.
No way. Osh joined later than me.
Okay.
And it definitely later than Lagnus.
So something funny is back when Heavensward came out, Heavensward launch was when unsyncing first came out. So, which is fitting because there was no other expansion prior to that. It was just ARR. But the funny thing is that we were all amazed by the new stuff and the new tone, like because Heavensward goes to such a darker tone than ARR was.
Oh my God,
and that was amazing. And hearing that there was this new option in the Duty Finder to be able to go back and fight an older thing and have it be, not synced to your level, it's actually your whatever your current level really is, and all your stats are applied and all that. We were actually kind of like having fun with it. So I remember sitting in our old TeamSpeak right before we had our Discord, because that was Stormblood time.
TeamSpeak.
So we were on TeamSpeak, yeah, all the way through until the very morning of Stormblood's launch is when we made our Discord. So if you find a way to go all the way back to the beginning of our Discord, it's literally the morning of Stormblood launch in our general or 14 chat. But what I was going to say is when Heavensward came out, there were people in the TeamSpeak laughing because they were like going through and just trying out whatever thing they could fight from ARR that used to be hard, and now they're unsyncing and slaying it all. And I had one guy in the channel who was like, he's like, I'm fighting Den the Orcatooth from Sastasha, and it's hilarious because I'm doing it all by myself. And we'd never seen anything like that before. We'd never seen soloable dungeons. It was actually incredible. Now, Den the Orcatooth, okay, well, it's a boss, but it's Sastasha's boss. So I'm thinking, oh, well, I can just apply unsyncing to anything. And I immediately picked like an EX trial and went in and just like got wrecked. Yeah, I just went in and got wrecked, and then they were like, oh dear. It was hilarious.
That would be so funny.
Yeah, I just thought it meant, I didn't know what it meant. I just thought, I was like, oh, you can just go in and one-shot stuff. I didn't know it meant it applied like whatever level you were. So being that we were 50, entering Heavensward, there were still some AX trials that even unsynced at 50 at eye level and all that, was still not a pushover. You had to know the mechanics. But anyways, let's, sorry, what did you say?
What expansion did Blue Mage come out?
So Blue Mage came out in the middle. I think it was mid Shadowbringers.
Middle of Stormblood.
Mid Stormblood. Yes.
Had to be Stormblood because it was initially 60, and then
yes, yeah, you are correct about that, because I just remembered I don't think it was the first fan festival for Stormblood. I think it might have been the European fan festival for Stormblood, if I remember correctly, where they showed Blue Mage the first time, and then it came out as fan festival was going, but didn't wait until Shadowbringers. So it got announced as new content, but they didn't make you wait for the new expansion, which is really interesting. If I'm remembering correctly, I think that's what it was, because I remember the president Matsuda came out in a Blue Mage costume. It was hilarious, and then I remember there was even like a cosplayer who had seen the Blue Mage announcement and overnight made a Blue Mage costume like perfect. And he sewed it together with his mom and announced it when he was on the stage, because he even had the fish there he was throwing at people. It was pretty comical. And yeah, it's been a little while, so the details are kind of hazy, but I kind of remember Blue Mage being announced at FanFest and then coming out prior to Shadowbringers. So that was kind of weird. I've been wondering for years, are they ever going to make another limited job? Because it's kind of a love-hate thing, right? Like, you level it and then you get all the spells and you don't know what to do with it for a while, or you use it to farm poetics and other things.
It's fun.
There's challenges like the Savage, try to get the Morbol mount, but that's pretty hard.
Yep. Or perhaps the best title in the game that should probably be mandatory for the council.
What, Azure and Omega? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Azure and the Omega. So, for looking back in 10 years, 10 years ago from now, we were in 2013. I was, I've told my story a lot, so I don't want to like totally focus on that. But I was there, anxiously awaiting the ARR launch. I originally discovered 14 when it was still Project Rapture at its announcement at a 2005 Microsoft press conference, with that famous video that showed what is now the Crystarium. It got made into the Crystarium for Shadowbringers, but it was originally meant to be a successor to Final Fantasy XI as an MMO, the next MMO, and originally they were using high-quality HD 11 sprites just to test the areas and make that first original video that they made for it. And, we all know what happened with 1.0. It crashed and burned. Thank you, Tanaka-san. And
I want to play it.
Yeah, there is a weird like fascination with wanting to actually feel it and and see it.
I feel like Mantilia would have gotten more context as to who
you know
she
what's
was.
fun about that is that there are options that Yoshi has actually commented on exploring. He said he's like, I know people do want to know the story part of it, and he sees that as kind of a valid reason rather than just wanting to experience the horribleness of the game.
Just because
But
Minfilia to me was like a mom.
Yeah,
That
yeah. Her story was really important to it was integral to the entire.
Freaking Alphino.
Yeah. And it does have roots in 1.0, which, you know, you don't have to know, but if you do, it does add a little bit. You can also just watch it on YouTube, but I mean, it's funner to play. So maybe they'll come out with something that lets us explore that. He did say something like that a couple years ago, but then the pandemic hit, and, you know, things slowed down and got a little weird for a little while. So here we are, looking forward to 6.5. Should be here by the end of the year, which will really tell us where we're going. And then next week, we're going to kind of get a preview of that, you know, not 6.5, but we're going to get a preview of the expansion. I'm expecting a few things, and we're going to talk about 7.0 predictions here shortly. I just want to spend enough time to really think about 14 in retrospect. So I want to ask you three, in the time that you have been in game, so some started 6 years ago, 2017, right? Some maybe 5 and 4 or maybe 3 years ago, 2020. In that time, you know, one at a time, what has stood out the most to you as a 14 player, and in general, how would you describe your experience going through the content and getting to where we are today?
Well, I think I'll kind of kick it off with what everyone's thinking.
Okay.
What a long, strange trip it's been.
Amen.
Yep. I can say that for sure. So I would say, maybe just to get a better idea, because I know that was a long question. What did it feel like for you three? Because I've been here since the beginning, but I want to know, like, for someone who started around Stormblood or Shadowbringers, what was that experience like when you got to the next expansion? Because you already had several expansions to experience, but then you get it caught up to where everybody else is, and you're like, oh wow, now we're all moving into this new frontier.
Technically, I didn't actually finish catching up until right before Endwalker.
Yeah, I know you didn't, but I mean, that's been almost 2 years now.
I took my sweet time crafting.
That doesn't feel like 2 years.
Stuff like that. Rip Protect.
Yes, Rip Protect. I still kind of look for that every time I tank a roulette.
Yeah, go visit Protect in Bosnia.
I think I'm good.
But like, for me, I started. I accidentally bumbled into White Mage. I wasn't intending to be a White Mage when I first started the game. Like, I made my first character, and I didn't want to race the character. I didn't want to, like, be a healer, because as Misty knows, I am usually the pet caster, range DPS. Magical bullshit. I mistook Arcanist and Conjure as the same, as two different classes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I thought that Arcanist was Scholar.
Okay. Well, it becomes that, but
Well, yes.
Or
but
Summoner.
I thought that Conjure was Summoner.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Oh, well, that makes sense though. Like conjuring the summon, like that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought was.
Yeah.
And like,
I don't blame you there.
It is a wild ride to see going through it and just like.
And actually being a good healer.
What?
And actually becoming a good healer.
I know, I hate it sometimes. But so here's like my experience of it is that I was the person that wanted to do every single side thing ever.
Okay. That's fair.
So like, I remember that Crystal Tower wasn't mandatory.
Yes.
At the time.
At the time, yeah. And it's mandatory now because it has a great effect on the third expansion. When you're in Shadowbringers, there's a very specific moment that has a lot more weight to it if you've done the Crystal Tower series. And there was a time where you could actually complete Shadowbringers without doing it, and they had a different dialogue option, but it didn't hit as hard, so they knew that they wanted to make that mandatory.
Yeah,
so that's why it's
like-
mandatory for those that might be wondering out there.
I actually hit the end of ARR right when they made that mandatory.
Oh, okay.
Ha 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 ha.
So I was like, wait, why don't you do this now? This wasn't a thing before. Because
Like
as
any-
Nora knows, this is Mistithgar is not my first character, actually.
Nope.
Yeah, Nora.
My original character was I made right after the launch of Stormblood, and then I got super frustrated with all the changes they were making at that time and left the game for like, what, 2-3 years?
Oh,
Something
wow.
like that, yeah.
Went back to WoW for a while, wound up helping to run a guild there for a while, and then that guild fell apart through a bunch of drama, and Nora convinced me to come back to FF.
Ah,
Yeah.
Yep.
I see. I
And
see.
so like
And I think your original character is even still on my friends list.
It is still even on my character list, and I could even play if I really wanted to. I have no desire to go back to that character.
Nora.
Yeah, I know. Let the past die.
Nora was like so confused why I was like screaming in excitement when that big moment in Shadowbringers happened.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was going wild because I knew exactly who that was, and I'm like, holy shit!
Yeah.
The
Actually,
boy's back.
My favorite thing about that was when I first met that character at the beginning of Shadowbringers, I was in a voice chat with Osh, Lag, 4, and someone else from the council back then. I remember who it was, but not on the council now. I literally said, Lag, this is, X. I'm like, he's like, maybe. I'm like, that's frickin' Nevis. He's like, maybe.
Oh gosh,
I
you know
called
what?
it for the first moment I saw him.
We're talking about a specific Mikote, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the funny thing about him. If you're listening to our podcast, well, of course you're listening to our podcast. Why did I say that?
You hear this, yeah.
Yes. So those listening, since it's really like just not. I mean, there is a name for him that's less spoilery. It's the Crystal Exarch that we're talking about. So we'll just use that name. We'll call him Exarch. For Exarch,
Just call him the boy.
yeah. So the funny thing is Exarch has an identity, and obviously it's obvious that he's mysterious because of when you first meet him in Shadowbringers, he's a hooded figure. Now here's the funny part for those who don't know, prior to Shadowbringers, the Exarch is first seen at the end of, I believe, 4.55, and or 4.5 in general.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Yeah, because he's like calling to you and all this stuff, and then you see him. So if you think about it, he was revealed in a patch there, and of course he does exist somewhere else in the game. Won't spoil that. But because he as Exarch was revealed in that patch, there was a number of months prior to Shadowbringers even releasing, where people were speculating who that was, and it was incredible to me because people had kind of guessed it like really super fast.
I remember that discussion.
And here's the funny part about that is he was an NPC that you do meet early-ish on, I guess, early-ish now, which would have been, I'm just going to say endgame-ish, back in the 2013 to early 2015 period would have been endgame. So this is a little hint, but not a spoiler all the way. And this NPC is part of a side quest line that, like we were saying, not everybody, needed to do. So, even when you did it, he, in a way, unless you got like really attached to the story of that quest line, and I don't want to say exactly which one it is because that'll outright spoil it. If you did that quest line, he's still kind of not like super memorable compared to all these other heroes of the story, and he stays in that quest line. You don't see him anymore. So unless that quest line hit you really hard or emotionally, which it doesn't really do until maybe the end of it, then he's very forgettable. And if you were playing from the beginning, you would have gone from 2013 all the way to 2019, 6 years, probably forgetting him. Most of the community did, But there was some people out there, just like with a few other characters, like Harshafont, for example. Harshafont was a guy that you didn't really talk too much in ARR, right? But he came to have massive significance in Heavensward, and has had a legacy ever since. So the funny thing was, those first 2 years of ARR, nobody talked about Harshafont. Now, I have two similar stories to both the Exarchs, original NPC that I won't name, that I was just talking about, and a story about Harshafont, and they're the same story. They're basically the fact that these are two NPCs that actually had fans way before there was any reason for them to have fans. Like,
Yep.
Harshafont, even less than the Exarch, because Harshafont was like a guy that you didn't even do hardly. You just did a few MSQ quests with him, and he stayed at Dragonhead, and he was a friendly dude, and that was it. It is kind of epic when he flies off his chocobo and tries to help you fight some bad guys like Ixal or whoever was out. I don't even remember now. Lambs of Dalamud, maybe some of those guys, the cult leaders or whatever. When you're in Kurthus, other than that, he's just the guy at Dragonhead, and that's it. And then the other guy over there with Exarch in his other form, you know, he's actually a little bit more memorable because of the special quest line he's in. But what's crazy is, like, there was almost like, if you went to any websites like maybe DeviantArt or maybe, I don't know, stuff like you know, Danburu or Gilburu or whatever, or Pixiv, very big art community site. Those sites are known for fans drawing so many like commission pieces or maybe non-commission pieces of characters of all kinds, right? So sometimes you will see a fandom around an NPC that you would have never imagined would have had a fandom, because that NPC has like no major bearing in the story. And Harshafont and the Exarch were in that exact category. There was like very few people on the planet that actually cared about them outside of just meeting them for the first couple times. And I remember what I'm building up to is that there was a night, like very close to the night of launch of Shadowbringers, where I'm like, yeah, that must be the Crystal Exarch, because I was looking into the theories that people were posting, and I was like, so that's got to be his identity. I see the tail and the color of the tail that's under the robe that somebody hacked the game to find out or something, and I was like, he's obviously a male Mikote. We can see the fingers, you know, they're male Mikote hands or something, and reading all these theories, and I looked up on Pixiv, and I'm like, wow, there's like 2 pieces of art of him like ever that have been posted since 2013, the last 6 years. And 2 days later, those websites exploded after Shadowbringers launch because his character went from being a forgettable nobody from way early on to an insanely popular character that everybody loves now, just about. You know, a lot of people love that character. Now he's super more memorable, super lovable. And I was just amazed personally, because this was a guy that I had a friend who really like had like a crush on him in the side quest that he was from, and I always thought she was like, you know, crazy, because I'm like, well, he's cool, but he's not that cool. Like, why do you like him so much, you know? And then bam, he comes back in Shadowbringers as like this amazing character, and now he's, you know, he's still with us today. And
promised you that you would see him again. Yeah,
and I trust that now, because I'm like, yeah, he is an awesome character. He became one of my favorite characters, and that's just a testament when we're talking about this retrospective here for this episode, is that looking that far back and then seeing how the devs, like, you know, used an old NPC that, you know, they probably thought, yeah, we'll use him in the future, but they didn't know back then what they were going to do in Shadowbringers, because somebody actually asked Yoshi P, did you have everything from ARR or even 1.0 all the way to Endwalker planned out originally? And he just like laughed and said, like, no, we kind of winged it. They did, like, they might have planned an expansion ahead, but not like 4 expansions ahead back at the beginning. So they really did just kind of like wing it. And so
you have to wonder now, are they still winging?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, because one thing that he said recently was, because you got to look at the interviews to know kind of where their heads are at, or watch these fan fests, look at the interviews, look at as much Yoshi P interviews as you can, because it really gives you insight into how they're thinking about the game and what they're going to come out with. And he did say recently that as of a year ago or so, the current situations going on in the patches right now were on 100% meant for 7.0. So if they were in 7.0, which is what we're, the place, you guys here know, but the place that we're in, that we're visiting and going to, that's associated with the patch story of the current patches for Endwalker, that place would have been way more like developed on as an expansion, and not just like it's kind of been crunched down a lot.
Yeah.
So there were 4 certain characters that we fought of a special fiend variety, I'll say, and a certain Black Knight that we fought that would have had more bearing as an expansion story. But I find it even more interesting that they crunched that down, and now what are we going to go to in 7.0? And there's a lot of theories that we'll share here in a second.
Yep.
So very interesting stuff that was actually originally somewhat planned. And of course the pandemic affected that. The crunch time between getting 14 back on track with its summer releases, or at least earlier year releases, not making people wait all the way to the end of December to or end of the year to December to get the expansion, and getting fan festivals back on track as actual live shows on 3 different continents. It's been a lot for them. So
I still do what I call the emotional damage combo.
What's that?
Playing on Scholar while going into the vault.
Oh.
Spoilers.
I've been there. Because when I go to
I've
heal,
also done the duty support version, so like you have Forshafont with you.
Oh.
So I cried.
Oh man.
I cried while streaming because I was like, I didn't want to do. When I found that out, I was like, I have to do this. I'm gonna cry, but
yeah,
I have to do it. Stormblood, I literally can't remember anything about, unfortunately, aside from Mommy Step on Me.
Yeah, Stormblood is an expansion that's very hit or miss with a lot of people, and I think it really depends on how much do you like the story and the political intrigue and stuff going on, because the factions and everything that's going on with the Eorzea War and the Garlean oppression and everything else, in the midst of the overall plot, which is more to do with the Ashians than anything, now that we're where we're at. And you think this anyway from ARR, so the Ashians are big bad guys, and they're even more mysterious than the Garleans. The Garleans really aren't that mysterious, but they're the most oppressive in visible form early on. So where it all comes back around to the end of Endwalker and where we are now, the patches. You kind of get this view going back to 10 years, and you're looking at everything since then, and you're like, wow, like this is really something, and it really is a special story. But what I was going to say is there is a part of the story of how it happened that's kind of quirky, that I think a lot of people don't always get the same. Like there's a lot of documentaries that talk about 14 and 1.0, but even before Yoshi was assigned to save it, there was this really huge company meeting at Square Enix, and they were still kind of like looking for who are we going to look for to take this on, because Tanaka had to go, and it's kind of sad because Tanaka's 14 legacy is horrible. He's the guy that ruined 1.0 and put the franchise in jeopardy. But what's sad is that Tanaka's Square Enix legacy is actually pretty great. Hiromichi Tanaka started with Sakaguchi back in the 80s, and together they went through the whole, history of FF all the way up to 14.
Is he responsible for 13 though?
I
think he was a good person.
Well, he's been involved like pretty much since the beginning, and he lasted way longer than Sakaguchi. Sakaguchi, the father of Final Fantasy, has kind of been like to put it in a really like weird sense, I guess, but that's kind of like easy to understand, is that he left, but just like Uematsu, they don't really like leave forever. Like he left as the owner or president. He doesn't make the FFs anymore as post Final Fantasy X. That's when he left. It was like 2001 or something like that. And even though it's been 22 years since that point, he's kind of like the dad that leaves the family, and then the mom remarries, so then the dad comes back to visit sometimes the kids. like you see him around at some events, and there were times where he was on bad terms with Square for a little while. Like there were moments where he got mad at them, he got angry. There was like a 2016 or 15 interview where he was actually like yelling at the 14 devs and the other devs, and he was telling them, you know, stop rehashing Final Fantasy, like we've had enough, you know, make something new. And then the Final Fantasy 15 event in San Francisco, he was invited as a guest. It was like the first time that Square had invited him back to something since like maybe 2010 or the late 2000s, and they honored him as the father of Final Fantasy, and he got this title, you know, which already existed, but like they, you know, was used more officially, because now every time you see him introduced, he's the father of Final Fantasy, Sakaguchi, and he was brought back with Amano, and Amano was still on decent terms with them, and you know, here's Sakaguchi again, and now he's just like kind of popping in and showing up here and there. And if you remember the 14-hour FF14 live stream for the anniversary last year, he spent a whole long segment with Yoshida, just drinking and talking about funny stuff and hanging out for a while. And it's amazing to see him come like all the way back around to where now he's on good terms with them, and he just shows up with like FF related things now. So there was some years where Sakaguchi was not around, but Hiromichi Tanaka, the guy, you know, the famous guy that killed 1.0, he never went on the same route as Sakaguchi, where he kind of left and became like this, you know, I don't know, like black sheep or whatever you want to call it. Like he was in Square all the way up to the point that 14 failed, and so I'm not one of those people who shouts, you know, Tanaka did nothing wrong. Like some people do that, and they go and post during the live letters and beg for Tanaka to come back, and everybody knows that, you know, that's not happening. But I think that it's kind of unfair to like hate Tanaka for 1.0 because of how much he put into the rest of the series, and some people just like don't know. But that the guy who made 1.0 and failed it was actually, you know, a long time legend at Square. So that's something to think about in retrospect as well. That it must have been a very difficult blow to him emotionally. I can only imagine spending 30 years at a company and making incredible, groundbreaking titles that are legendary RPGs, and then failing there, and that being your way out. So.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say pour one out for Tanaka despite even 1.0. And the company meeting I mentioned, there was a moment where Yoshida's name was on the list of people that were going to come speak at the company meeting. And on that very day in, I think it was 2010 or 2011. No, sorry, 2010 is when 1.0 launched. It would have been 2011, I think, because it was going up towards, you know, it had already been out for a year and it wasn't doing very well. So Yoshida's name was on the list to talk. They didn't put Naoki, they just put Yoshida. And so since Yoshida's name shares a kanji with Akihiko Yoshida, who is a very famous artist at Square, he does the, if you remember, like the Ivalice art, anything for Bravely Default, all that kind of art style, yeah. That's all Akihiko Yoshida. So the people in the audience that were part of the company and the others on the Square board or whatever, they thought that they were hiring the artist to do his first production gig. So they were all very confused, and they were expecting Akihiko Yoshida, who is a totally different looking guy. He doesn't look anything like Yoshi P. He's just this you know, this whole other persona, and he's a whole different character. You know, his whole demeanor, everything is what I'm getting at. You know, he's a totally different person, and they're expecting him to walk in the room, and here comes, you know, little Naoki Yoshida walking in, and nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew, despite working on Dragon Quest. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, despite working on Dragon Quest X, the people that were there were mostly concerned with 14, and they were expecting the artist to come in, and they were even wondering too. They were like, is he going to use his art to somehow like propel the game in the future? Because he already did a couple pieces for 1.0. There's a novel out there that's only available in Japanese. It's a novel for 1.0 called Eorzea no Hikae, and there's a artwork on the front of it that Akihiko Yoshida did, and so he had just done that, and he had not done any art for Square since like 2006, 2007 for the Zodiac Job System version of Final Fantasy XII, which is now known as Zodiac Age, but that's back when it was only in Japan on PS2. And then prior to that, he hadn't done anything for Square since the 90s. So there were some people who had not seen him since Final Fantasy Tactics came out, and they were like, wow, he's really coming back to save 14. And then here comes Naoki Yoshida. And they're like, oh, wrong Yoshida. So that's a little story that not everybody knows that happened at that meeting there. But and then Yoshi P, during that meeting, that was the meeting where he gave them the famous "Give Me a Chance" speech, and it was a speech. It's known in Square, and there's a I don't know off the top of my head, but there's a Japanese saying for the "Give Me a Chance" speech that they have, and a lot of people working at Square since then who remember that were really super inspired by that, because they did not know him besides Dragon Quest, and he in the Final Fantasy divisions at Square, he just wasn't in any of their offices. So, like I said, he was mostly unknown to those working on FF stuff. So, with Hashimoto-san, the previous brand manager of Final Fantasy, present, he hadn't had the chance to work with him, because he knew the departments as the brand manager, but he didn't work with Dragon Quest. So, you had President Matsuda, or was it? No, I think Yoichi Wada was still president back then. Well, anyway, the old president, the old brand manager, and then several other folks there, and then they're expecting Akihiko Yoshida, and here comes Yoshi P, and he gives the "Give me a chance, I will not let you down" speech, and holy crap, look where we are today, all because of that meeting. That meeting changed all of our lives, and here we are. Here we are today.
I will admit that I'm excited. I'm super excited about the new live letter that's going to happen when the Fan Fest happens, because of the thing. But also, I can make memes like this again.
I loved those. That feels like yesterday, and it was already a year ago.
I was just like taking random screenshots and being like, I just kept looking at Yoshi P's face.
Yeah, when he was looking at the Namazu, the buff Namazu.
He's just like looking at the Namazu.
Did you know that Yoshi P originally hated the Namazu?
I thought he still hated the Namazu.
He probably does, yeah. But there was it was a fan design contest or something, and that was the design that won, and he hated it.
Honestly, I at one point hated the Namazu, but now they're tolerable because they're funny, because they're stupid.
I have always thought they were hilarious. They're just mega funny.
I always hated the Namazu. Probably always will.
But I can't look at a catfish anywhere in anything and not think of Namazu now.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't unsee it now, no matter what I do.
Well, another fun fact that would be interesting to share here is a little bit of a shorter fact than that long story I just told. But as of the end of Heavensward, so that would have been in early 2017, there was the last, and I don't remember them doing one since, so if they have done one, forgive me, I may have not seen it, but they did the Eorzean census, which is something where they took tons of data and they put it together, and then they took the data from the Eorzean census to see how many players of playing this and that, this job with this race combination and blah blah blah, just all this data, right? Because they can do that. They took that, and then they took the Eorzean census data and they put it towards a series of infographics that were really, really neat at the time. And it was like one of them, some of them were hilarious. One of them, there's a guy doing squats in the game, and an NPC, and they actually did the math to see how much energy his squats could generate per second, and put that towards powering some large device or something. And they were like, yeah, this one guy could power this town for 3 years, depending on how many squats he's done since the game launched. It's just these hilarious infographics. And then another one was how many miles Yoshi P has traveled in a plane doing press releases and stuff, and it was enough to go to the moon and back. It literally, it was really funny. One that really got me though was they released one that showed how many players had the Squall Jacket. Now, the Squall Jacket is a veteran reward, which means you had to play the game for a while to get it. But back then, you had to play the game for almost 2 years to get it. And then, because it's the final veteran reward, and they stopped doing them the way they used to do them, and they made it to where you now get them much, much quicker. But because they showed in the infographic the exact number of how many players owned that jacket at the time, it actually told us the number of people who had still been playing the game since launch at that time, and it was freakishly low compared to what we would have expected it to be at the time. And if you did the math based on how many players they said the game had and how many servers there are in 14, it came down to like less than 50 people per server who had still been playing since launch at that time.
That's insane.
Which is crazy, because that means the older player that you are, the more of a rarity you are as far as a veteran goes. And so it was just really interesting fact. So I thought that would be fun to share here as well.
And I would have a few 1.0 players.
I have a veteran that's not even available anymore.
Are they not? Are they not available?
I have the Falcon that's not available. The Falcon veteran reward.
Oh, well, no, the Falcon was originally
randomly once.
They brought it back recently. It was a Moogle trope.
It was a Moogle trope, but originally it was a veteran reward.
Originally, it was for subscribing more than 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was done during a campaign, so it wasn't a regular veteran reward. It was
was that?
Yeah, they called it the Fly the Falcon campaign because the Falcon, I think, is the name of the.
I just remember popping up in my. I remember popping up in my inventory one day.
Well, you know what that means? That means that the campaign was running and you subscribed at the same time. You just happened to subscribe right at the time the campaign was running.
It just happened to... Okay.
And you know what? That's a highly sought-after mount. Like, people were like, man, I wish I had a time machine to go back and do it. And Misty just has it because he, like, did it without even thinking. People are like, man, I really wish I had that from back in the day. And, like, he just has it.
I wish that...
But it looks really funny on Rothgar, though.
Oh, I bet. That and probably Melrose. Just like the Whisper Go-Go mount.
Like, for me...
Half the mounts do not scale well for Rothgar.
Have you seen the Whisper Go-Go with the, like, male Rogadin in it?
I don't think I have, but I know I want to.
You have to. You have to. It's so...
Tell me Johnny has it so we can see Johnny.
Johnny has it. Ask him to...
Yes!
Please ask
Johnny,
him.
if you're listening to this, please!
Johnny, take a screenshot and show us.
Please.
But if you see him in game, just ask him. He'll do it.
Oh yeah. Fun fact for me, my Chocobo was not my first mount.
Really?
Technically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My first mount was actually the fat black Chocobo.
Oh.
Did you? Yes.
And how did you get yours? Because, like, there's been a few different promotions.
The Amazon.
Amazon, like, yeah, that's the original.
Amazon one.
Yep.
Because it was like one of the first, like... It was like one of my first time cards, too, I think.
Did you know that when they did that Amazon thing, and it included the, like, the butler and maid dress and all that, they, there was an outrage. They did that because of an outrage. Originally, those were only locked to 7-Elevens in Japan. Like in a year prior to when it came out in North America. So people were like, really, really mad. So 14 was like, well, we'll just do an Amazon promotion then, and they managed to do that. But originally, it was like a legal thing because like Seven Holdings or whatever, the owner of 7-Eleven, I think had like some weird claim on it where they didn't want them to release it on Amazon. So after a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo, they did an Amazon promotion and did it, I think, in like 2017. Because I remember when it came out, lots of people were in Idleshire, and Idleshire was like pretty much completed at that time. Because that's what one really cool thing they used to do back in the day was the towns would grow as time passed. They don't do that anymore. It drives me crazy. But we had a Firmament, which was kind of similar. They made us build our own housing ward. You want Ishgard housing so bad? Here, you have to do it yourself.
Like, I didn't want the Ishgard stuff. I just wanted the fucking title.
Oh my god, though. Since housing came out in 2014, though, that's all I had heard all the way until like 2020 or whatever it was.
I'm really sad.
Ishgard housing.
We like the Square Enix rewards. We like it isn't available anymore, but we have something that we were going to get a match to it, but like we forgot about it. There's my other right is a Chocobo license.
I was about to ask you if that's what it was because I had one of those too.
I'm so sad that it's gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't see it anymore. I was actually looking through it just now just to see.
Oh, man.
Like,
yeah, she pokes
it's
around the
gone.
members site every now and again, and yeah,
It's gone.
Yeah, I remember like going through those rewards. Well, do we want to talk about 7.0 predictions?
ooh.
Hell yeah.
Ooh, man.
Alright.
One at a time.
Hell yeah.
Let's see. How about let's start with Mist. What do you think's going on next year?
I mean, my original prediction is gone out the window now with everything Yoshi P's been saying.
Oh, and this
so-
will be like a spoiler moment because there's no way we can't talk about the current story. We'll talk about 7.0 predictions.
Yeah.
So just so our listeners know, spoiler.
All right, my throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks. Guess is one of the other fragments.
Oh, the shards, the
shards.
shards of Hydaelyn, the reflections. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, that's a fair guess. I mean, they're out there. That we've got NPCs right now that are talking about, well, not NPC, but main story characters talking about going to those shards now. Which back when we first got to Shadowbringers, it was kind of like, oh yeah, the community was like really divided on are we going to now start visiting shard by shard, and then we realized that no, there's a lot of stuff in the source to still do. So maybe that was just a concept for them. But now we're done with a lot of stuff in the source, even though there's a lot more stuff in the source that we found out,
Yeah.
like Maricidia and freaking
Yeah,
New World
Maricidia.
and all that, which I'm sure is going to come up in some of our predictions here in a second. But
I feel like they're saving
but the shards,
New World for a
yeah.
Monster Hunter crossover.
Monster Hunter crossover. Okay.
Monster, another one?
Another one? Yeah.
No, but think about it. Monster
An
Hunter
entire
World
continent?
takes place in the New World.
Okay. Well, yeah, they did.
I can see what you're getting at, but
In Monster Hunter World, they do call that place the New World, but I don't think that's the same New World.
I know.
Because it actually has a
That'd be
name other than
hilarious,
that.
though.
There's a name that is used for it that a lot of people don't know. It's called Kettenland. And it even has another name after that. It's a third name, and I don't know what the third name is, but
I know it's not
Manuel
what you
Jaw
said,
call
but
it
my
that.
brain heard Kiddenland.
Kettenland.
me.
Because of the explorer Ketten that discovered it, he called it Kettenland, and he said the residents of that land didn't like it, and he came back to
It's
Eorzea
America.
and taught Blue Mage magic that he learned while he was in the New World. So, and then the Manuel Jaw that live there, because that's their main continent. They, because you only see them in Lenosha, but like that's where they're actually from. So when we do get to go there, there is a lot of them there, and they have their own name in their own language for that land. And the only thing we really know about that land, other than blue magic, is the fact that it's a very Aztec-y themed land with like giant golden pyramids and stuff of like Aztec.
Can you imagine we go there and suddenly Blue Mage is not a limited
the
job
golden
anymore?
cities of the New World,
Oh,
as they
that
say.
would be amazing.
Yeah.
I would honestly say that I want to go to Maricidia. I want to see what Maricidia is like.
Is that your 7.0
Yes.
prediction?
Going to Maricidia, restoring Garlemald for some odd-ass reason, and traveling to the other stars.
For some odd reason.
Not just restore the stars.
Because we got bored. Yeah.
Go Marshall Plan on Garlemald.
Garlean housing. We'll have 2 snow zones.
Da, 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 da,
Well,
da, da.
Since you mentioned Maricidia, and I was waiting for that to come up, let me just mention this because being the lore expert here, I can give our listeners and you three here a little bit of an idea of what Maricidia is actually like, so that way when we get there we can see how accurate that is. What we know right now from 14 lore is that Maricidia is kind of split up into 3 segments. It is one continent, so I don't mean geologically segments. If you remember the Warring Triad story in Final Fantasy XIV, you will know that there is a segment of Maricidia that's covered in forest. So we do know that. We do know there are tree people. So I don't know if they're like, not so much like the tree ants or trents or whatever, but there might be like like the Ents from Lord of the Rings. I'm imagining some kind of like Ent-like race that lives there because they're the ones who worshipped Sephiroth, and they're the ones who brought Sephiroth into existence as a primal. There's also that is also the Mikote's homeland. Maricidia is, and the Mikote were able to cross over to the other continents because of the ice age that happened, and so the frozen water and all that. But the Mikote homeland, I don't know a whole lot about, but the fact that there is, outside the forests of Maricidia, there is a very Egyptian theme in Maricidia, because there's a the Ben Stone minion is a part of that lore. And there's another thing, I forgot where, but it talks about the pyramids of Mericidia. So there's an Egyptian theme, and the fact that there's a great forest and an Egyptian theme. Who's played Final Fantasy V? The Great Forest of Mor and the Great Pyramid of Mor. And I have a good feeling that those two things are going to both appear in Mericidia. So, because of the Great Forest of Mor and the Great Pyramid of Mor.
I think that it would be funny if, like, they go into the origins of how Mikote or become Mikote.
How they became?
But, like, what if... Like, what if like the pharaoh is a Mikote and like the year worship the Miko, like the Egyptians worship cat.
Oh gosh, well the
ancient Egyptians and stuff.
I know that it is very known in Mikote lore that the Mikote do not like being compared to cats, and I also know that in what we did find a little bit in Eureka that talks about the Mithra being an ancestor of the Mikote. So maybe there were Mithra that mingled with Hears and kind of created a hybrid over the years of a human-like, a more human-like Mithra that became Mikote. It's my guess.
I would almost be willing to bet that the Mikote live in the forest part because of how well they are, how good of a hunters that they are.
That's a like very good idea. Yeah.
Like you see them in Gridania, like the poachers.
But you also see them in Alamigo.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
They're all over.
Listen,
yeah.
Because
none of those lands are really their homelands. I mean, they're in the tribes that have the letters, like the M tribe, the U tribe.
Yeah.
You've even got like Hingan Mikote. So given the fact that we've got like an Egyptian theme, a forest theme, well, there's also the lizard people, and you get to see them in a little bit of their surroundings in the Zervin fight in the Phase 2, where you flat out fight an enemy that's called Mericidian, and that's also where the dragons lived when they were oppressed by the Allagans, and that's another huge part, and that's why I think where we're going right now in the current patches has something to do with Mericidia. Reason being, the ancient Allagan war against the dragons, which ended with them capturing the dragons and enslaving them mostly, and taking them, most of them back to Azizla, where they, a lot of them had the collars that kept them as like slaves and such. When they went into Mericidia to expand their empire, they made a deal with the Cloud of Darkness, who I think is going to be a next major antagonist, because in the raid she just flies off. She's not dead, and she's a huge part of the Void. The place we know as the Void.
Weren't we just debating that the other day, Mist? What happened to Cloud of Darkness?
Yeah, I think she's going to become
months ago.
And being that Crystal Tower is mandatory.
No, me and Nora also talked about it.
Yeah.
Well, that was a while ago, though.
Think about it, though. They made Crystal Tower mandatory, which means you not only get to meet another character, but you also have to know who Cloud of Darkness is for probably 7.0. Now, when the Allagans made a deal with the Cloud of Darkness, it was so that the Voidkin could cross over into the Source and gain bodies when they would get the bodies of the like people they fought in Mericidia. They were going to possess them or something like that as they killed them or whatever, and it would give them bodies that they could escape the Void with, and that was the idea that they had. It didn't go that way though, because when the Allagans released Void all over Mericidia, it just turned into chaos, and the Voidkin fed on the people, and then when the portals closed, they were either screwed or they went home. So that didn't exactly work out, but the Allagans ended up capturing all the dragons they wanted, and genocide was all over the place across Mericidia. So if we go there, I'm expecting it to be a graveyard for one thing. Two, whoever does live there, there are people that do live there, because for a long time I thought Mericidia was barren because of the Allagan history with it and that war. But there was a moment, I don't remember where it was, maybe one of you three do, in the MSQ, they mentioned something about a ship going to Mericidia that got hit with a force field because somebody in that continent is protecting it for a mysterious reason. And there was a force field, so merchants couldn't go. Yeah, like they said.
I think it was a weird throwaway line.
Well, they showed something. I think they showed like a map and maybe I'm just imagining it, but there was like a moment where they mentioned.
No, it's like you're not wrong about the map and stuff. I just remember hearing it. I think it was a throwaway line. I remember where it was.
It was so brief, and they mentioned it, and I was like, oh my god. So they were, maybe it was in 6.1 because the newfound adventure. They were wondering where to go, and they're like, well, we can't go.
Might have been.
We don't want to go there because the people there don't let anybody in. And I'm like, whoa, they mentioned Mericidia and not letting people in, so that means there's people there protecting something. What are they protecting, right? So maybe there's something to do with Cloud of Darkness going on in 7.0. Mericidia. I think Mericidia is really the best bet, especially with what we're doing right now in the current patches, being that it's associated with that certain place. And it's going to have something to do. And, the thing we saw at the end of 6.4, the big throwback creature is going to have something. I think it's going to actually break through either to the source, or it's going to break through to a new reflection we haven't been to yet. And Yoshi P did comment on the other reflections once not long ago, and people asked, can you tell us anything about what those reflections are like? And he said, I can't, but I will tell you that some of them might surprise you. So what does that mean? That means that maybe we go to one that's not like, they don't need a warrior of light or darkness. They're just like, fine.
They're chilling because the Ascians didn't fuck with them. Maybe
there's one like that. I don't know. Or maybe we'll have like a really strong reference to another game or something. Like something like that would be crazy. But the thing that's going on at the end of the current patch, that can't just be like a trial one and done. Like there's got to be something that leads into what's coming up. So
I'm still waiting for my Star Ocean crossover.
Dare I say it, but we might get a shard that's like near.
Did you watch the Star Ocean anime?
Which one?
The one based on 2.
That's Star Ocean EX, yeah. Yes, I watched EX.
They actually use the phrase Warrior of Light.
Yep.
Yeah, I know, right? So
that's why I'm waiting for it.
Yeah. I would say
that's a bit of a stretch.
But in FF canon, Star Ocean would technically fit in the future of Earth.
I also do need to point out, however, when Nora's saying that's a stretch, that if you actually compare some of the locations in that anime to Eorzea, there's more than a few congruencies.
What if Midgard Stormer goes back to the Dragon Star?
You mean like his corpse like unwraps from the Agrius and flies off?
Yeah, but he has that little baby
if that happens, I'm calling Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans.
Yeah. He has
that little floaty baby form that he talks to it throughout the entirety of Heaven's Word.
But he's a mount. Back to the Dragon Star, but the Dragon Star is like the pieces of it are over floating around Ultima Thule, so
parts of it are, yes.
Relatives.
Yeah, that's what's left. Okay, well,
I thought that was just like a fragment of it.
So we got one. We got me, and I think Glitch was the one who said Mericidia. Yeah. So it's 2 for Mericidia. What about you, Nora?
Well, I was also gonna say Mericidia because
okay.
I think like y'all are saying, it's probably it's definitely one of the obvious options. We've got the tie-in from the whole thing where we free Tiamat. We've got the whole line Emmett Selk says as we're finishing 6.0. We've got all of this other Allegan bullshit going on. I feel like that's pretty obvious.
Okay.
My question, since I'm now the third person to say Mericidia, what if it's too obvious?
I thought about that too, yeah.
We know the dev team likes to plan things out like 2 expansions in advance. Like we got the teaser for Garlemald going into what was Shadowbringers.
And then we didn't go there at all in Shadowbringers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What if Mericidia is too obvious?
It could be. Yeah, it's happened. It's happened before. Yeah. So
I'm so surprised I'm still like reeling from the Golbez reveal thing. Like where he actually was.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
And that whole debacle.
Yeah. All that's been really crazy.
But if we don't go Mirror City and 7L,
well, I'd say the shards or a New World, but New World is really big. Have you seen like the map of it from space or?
I remember seeing pictures of it.
It's a long continent, like going all the way down. So I would say like it's worthy of a couple expansions using that place. Like, I mean, we've look at the 3 great continents. Like they're basically the same size as the New World all put together. And those have lasted us this long. So if we've got shards and the freaking New World and Miracidia, like I could see why we have 10 more years.
They've easily got 10 years of content right there.
Yeah.
We also haven't seen like all of Hingashi.
yes.
Oh yeah,
Hingashi.
Koshu. Yeah, we haven't seen the rest of the whole Koshu region. Bugyo is the capital of the Hingan Island. So that place has been isolated for a reason, kind of like Ishgard was. We don't really know exactly why, but it's a humongous city that's supposed to be bigger than Kugane. Kugane is just a port, so
yep.
Yeah,
Bugyo,
it's a major port.
Bugyo would be really cool, and it's really cool that you mentioned that because Yoshi, when talking about Mount Rokon recently, he said that the dev team was kind of sad that they hadn't made any like Hingan content in like a while, so it made it seem like they want to keep doing that, and if they want to make the rest of Koshu matter, well then I'd love to see Bugyo one day as a main city.
I mean, just like just for like real world comparisons. I mean, Kugane is really more like Kobe or Yokohama was back in the day.
And
like
you've got other things on the map too.
Yeah, it's meant to be a place to make foreigners lose their money in the country.
Yeah.
Like aside from Hingashi, like another place that we haven't been to aside from the Raid series is Dalmasca.
Yes, I want to see Dalmasca. I want to see whatever's left of Ivalis.
Oh boy.
Yeah, here we go. I mean,
I know how you feel.
I feel about 12.
No, I know. Well, I feel very similar. But it's all because of Masuno, the creator of Ivalice and the writer of the Ivalice games as well as the Ivalice content in 14. And he said he's done. He said, I'm done. He's done. Bozja and all that wore him out. And he hadn't done that in a long time. And that's why we ended up having like just a bunch of field notes covering what was supposed to be, the either end of Zadnor or post Zadnor content. So I am just saying right now, I mean, anything could happen. But I really don't think we're going to see any more Ivalice content in 14. And I hate saying that. I really don't want that to be a thing, but I think it is. And he's already talked about how worn out he is. He even said not only in 14, but never again, even in another game. He just said he's done, and it's like the saddest thing ever. So, but hey, you know what? Maybe we'll see. Maybe we won't. Maybe someone else will take up the mantle, but he won't. And with Tactics Ogre getting the remaster recently, it makes it look like they want to do more with that franchise. But the same thing happened in 2010 when they did the 2010 Let Us Cling Together PSP remaster, which was amazing. And then that's the one that got remastered a second time into the one that just came out. And so it's unclear whether they really want to do anything with Tactics Ogre and Ivalice because they're one and the same. Maybe the same guy. They're inheritance from the old company Quest, which is also where Yoko Taro came from originally, and it's just like nobody wants to work on those anymore. They want to make a new one. And Tactics Ogre grossly needs more stuff because those technically the one I think the one that just got a remaster, which is Let Us Clean Together, that's like episode 4 or something, and then there's another one that's like episode 3, so it's even worse than Star Wars because the episodes are all over the place, and I don't even think you can't even play them in order because it goes 1, 3, 5, 6 or something like that. It's like Xenogears level of episodes being random. It was episode 5, but
I've never played that one.
Xenogears?
Nope.
Oh man, You gotta play it.
I have not tried Xenogears Saga in so long.
Xeno is a whole nother discussion of its own, but maybe we'll bring that one up on the next podcast. But I wanted to tell you, I don't mean to totally dash your hopes, Nora, but I don't know if we're ever going to see Evilise content again. But in terms of nearby regions, Corvus is always there. And
I was going to say Corvus.
Here's the thing.
That's gross.
They have a small problem on their hands. The devs have a little bit of a loophole or a plot hole in there because they put Valnain. Valnain is a city from Vagrant Story, which is also part of the whole Evilise thing. It's part of the package. And Valnain is like not just on the map; it is like this big icon for a big city that's on the map. And it was mentioned briefly at the very, very end of Zadnor, the Bosnia Relic series. But Valnain is there. It's in the source, and it's an active, living city that's there, flat on the map that anyone can view at any time when you make your map all the way zoomed out. So with Valnain there, it's like, how could there not be something to do with it if Masano is totally done, right? So maybe he won't be. And Yoshi P loves Masano. He loves that guy. It's a huge inspiration to him. He talked about it a million times, how much he wanted to bring him on the team for 14, and how he even geeked out, because he played Masano's games, in the past when he was younger. Yoshi did. So in defense of Evilise stuff coming back to 14, that would be the saving grace, is the fact that Yoshi loves Masano, and they've still got a city they barely wrote about or did anything with that's on the map. So, I mean, there was one time, if you talk to, I think, Bagamnon real shortly during, maybe it was in between Delubrum Regine and Zadnor, he would actually tell you what was currently going on, like politically and with the people of Valnain at the time. There was a huge like revolt and all this stuff going on there, but that's like the only other thing we get to hear about Valnain, hardly. So that being such a big city, and then you get that one cutscene where you see it in the background of one of the last cutscenes of Zadnor. So Valnain's there, Corvus is there, the ancient home of the Garleans, supposed to be destroyed, but there's still people there. That's also where a certain character we talked about earlier is calls home.
I was gonna say, doesn't a certain friend of ours happen to
be from Corvus?
Have some connection to there? Yeah.
So there's that. There is a lot more names on the map that we haven't seen. Some of them could just be fishing routes. Some of them could just be dungeons in the future. We don't know. But we do know that there's a couple continents that are way too big to not be something, and that's Mericidia in the New World. So my guess is on Mericidia, mainly because I think they're gonna surprise us with one thing that none of us here have mentioned yet tonight in our predictions, and that is the two-part story thing, where you go to one direction for a little bit and you come back to another part of the world for the other, like they did with Stormblood.
True.
Or even with the Thavnair / other parts of the world during Endwalker, right? But I think we're going to be partially in another reflection and partially exploring Mericidia. Like, think big. It's possible. It's possible. Because if Mericidia is too obvious, they might just put 2 or 3 zones in Mericidia and a couple zones in a reflection. But wouldn't it kind of be a waste to only do a couple zones out of a reflection? So, I don't know. It's kind of a conflicting idea. Unless Mericidia really is a graveyard and there's hardly anything there. It's tough to say. It's really tough to say. But I think as far as the raid series,
you bring up a point though. Also, though, like traditionally, each expansion's only had 6 zones.
Yes.
But they've had a fair bit more time than usual to also work on this expansion.
They're not going to do more than 6.
I have a feeling that this.
You don't think they will?
6 is the magic number. It's the magic number for all the sightseeing logs, the fishing log. Everything is tied to there being 6 zones. So it would be a lot more work, I think. Plus, with Endwalker, they did kind of. I mean, I personally feel like they cheaped out on Thavnair, because Thavnair is a much bigger island than that, and they gave us 1 zone, technically 2 with Razat-Han, right? But that's a city, 1 exploration zone for that entire bit of land that we've heard about since the beginning. So it's like, I kind of wish we had a little bit more of Thavnair to explore besides the dungeon and the city. So yeah, but if they did that to Mericidia, like, I could see maybe 2 zones if they're trying to be cheap with it. And then also, I thought of what would be the raid for 7.0. The Great Pyramid of Moor could be a raid, because there's the Forest of Moor as well, and those have throwbacks to Final Fantasy V, so that could be something. And then there's another place that we haven't thought about at all, and it's not in the source. It's not a reflection. The Rift. You guys remember the Rift?
Vaguely, very vaguely.
You saw it very, very, very quickly during the Ozma fight, when you go in the inner world and you're in the Rift for a second, and there's another form of Ozma in there, and it's where all the ruins of Nim, that the Makai people created Ozma out of a Esper whose ether was misaligned, or it was off the God, what's the, not algorithm, the equation of how much ether it had that would balance its existence out was manifested negatively, so it caused it to turn into a sphere with a positive and a negative side. That's why Ozma has the lighter half and the darker half. That's what Ozma is. And so then they use it as a weapon, like a living Esper, backwards negative Esper weapon thing that had weird powers to be able to send things into the Rift. And they sent it, the Makai people during the War of the Magi sent it straight to Nim, over in Lenosha, and the Nimian people, Ozma was just sucking up their crap and just sending it to the Rift. And so the Rift is a real place that's also in a couple different Final Fantasies. And if you are in the Ozma fight next time, look up in the sky, you see like a burning hole that leads back to reality, I guess. And the rest of the Rift is characterized by a infinite blue sky and random pieces of civilizations that got stuck in the Rift. So the Rift is not the Void, because the Void's kind of a similar property, but now we're learning what the Void is, right? So the Rift is like the real thing that we thought the Void was, and the Rift has not been fully explored yet. And it makes me wonder, maybe if there's some throwback to like the Rift, and the Rift does appear in Final Fantasy V as well, and if they have the Great Forest of Moor and the Great Pyramid of Moor in Marasidia, that's either a raid story or it's part of the main story. But I think we're going to see those are just some of my predictions for 7.0, what we might see. So some stuff we can kind of visualize early and think about Marasidia beforehand.
Remember, which fight's Ozma?
Okay, so when you're in Weeping City of Mach, and the big ball thing that...
Yes.
Okay, the big ball, yeah. It's a super boss of Final Fantasy IX, actually. And when that thing came out, whoo boy, when that thing came out, when Ozma released in was it late 2016 during patch, was it odd patch, so it would have been 3.3, I think it was. I want to say that's right. Yeah, 3.3. So it was after the second set of Alexander, I think, after Midas. So when Weeping City came out, man, that raid was actually pretty tough. It was like, if we remember Puppet's Bunker came out, like the difficulty, that was something. And people were actually asking for a Weeping City Savage. and during the fan fest that announced Stormblood, I forgot his name, but the guy who created the boss fight for Ozma, he was really super new back then, and that was the first time they had a fight that had like 3 platforms that had the same mechanics that the Ozma fight has. And the way that fight plays out, it goes into several phases, and it's like in a raid like that. They decided to keep that guy on the team, and they nicknamed him Mr. Ozma. Yeah, and there was this really funny fan reaction, because when they introduced him at FanFest as Mr. Ozma and told his story of how he came to make that fight with the Ozma ball and all the mechanics and stuff, the people in the crowd were chanting "Mr. Ozma, Mr. Ozma," and he was just like soaking it up and like cheering on the stage and stuff. And then every time he comes back to FanFest, they would cheer for Mr. Ozma. And now Mr. Ozma is like a part of the team.
That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty comical. Yeah, he's a funny guy. Mr. Ozma. All these memories, and then 7.0 predictions. What about bosses for 7.0? Are we going to see that battle challenge at FanFest for what I think is Asura? Will that be in the next 6.5, or do you think that might be 7.0? I think it's 6.5, because if you look at the tree in the background, it's a Thavnarian tree.
I think that she's going to be 7.0.
Yeah, I think they said that it's not gonna be 6.5.
Did they?
Or it's not gonna be soon. So I'm definitely thinking it's one of the 7.0 bosses.
And
I think it's the first trial.
She's most prominent in Final Fantasy IV. That's kind of like her debut and stuff, I think, in the series. So, I mean, more 4 references, or maybe just a bunch of stuff. Because, well, if you think about it, the stuff I was saying earlier was that the current stuff we've been doing and current enemies and stuff, that was all planned for 7.0. So if Asura shows up at 7.0, that means a lot of FF4 stuff was planned for, well, I mean we get FF4 references all through Endwalker, but that also means 4 was planned in 7.0 as well. So what if I don't know, I think I'm just excited because they have like the whole breadth of FF to like really play with now. And I think they're just going to go crazy with that from here, and it's going to be amazing.
I don't know. I have called what was going to be like the trials while I was streaming Endwalker. I have called it. I wasn't expecting Trial 1 though. I thought Trial 1 was going to be the last trial, but I was wrong. And then I was like, okay, if I beat this thing this time, this person's the next trial.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm actually very sad that Anima was not a trial boss.
I know.
After they did Anima dirty, I think
they did Anima dirty.
Anything.
Yeah, I mean, what made me feel dumb was every FanFest, they've always showed like the artwork of the upcoming like the 2 major trials, right? So with Heavensward, they were like, wow, we designed a new primal that's not been in any other game except for technically Ravana had been in Final Fantasy 12 Revenant Wings. I think it was, but they were like, yeah, Ravana, and then Ravana was like this, this supposed to be 14 exclusive one, and then Bismarck is a lower, lesser known one for Bismarck, and then I got a funny Ravana story to share too, but Ravana, the artwork was awesome. We're like, oh wow, this big bug guy with 4 arms, and he looks crazy, and in Japanese. In my opinion, this is my opinion, he sounds a lot crazier in Japanese. In English, I turned it to English recently for the first time after all these years, and I was like, oh my god, like, why does he sound like that? Is he's like way more intimidating and scary sounding in Japanese.
I'm sorry, the vis-a-vis lines and character, the best primal will always be the Rebel.
Oh, yeah, good old.
I just want to fight you because it's funny. He's the Saint 14 of FF14. He's just here to bash stuff and have fun. Tell me I'm wrong.
And they've always showed the 2 major ones. So like for Stormblood, Susanoo, Susanoo was shown. Yep. And we even got a preview of it at E3 before Stormblood came out, and it was really neat. And looking at Stormblood's Susanoo, looking at the Ravana, and then Bismarck was the partner to Ravana, I guess you could say, in 3.0, and then going so on and so forth. Innocence and Titania being shown for Shadowbringers at the FanFest for Shadowbringers that announced that. So here we are with the Endwalker, the one for Endwalker, showing us in 2021. We're getting this nice preview, and here's Anima, and they're like, yeah, we brought back the original artist from 10, and he redrew it and made like this epic looking Anima, and we're like, yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Yeah. And a lot of times, like when we heard Pandemonium was coming out as a raid for Endwalker, like a year ago, no, it's not a year ago now, it's because that's actually been out a year prior to it, like almost like 12 months, like 10 months prior to the first tier of Pandemonium came out. I already had Azure Pandemonium Tuesdays like written down as something for us to do by the end of the year, because I just knew, we knew when we get those previews from those shows, we know what's coming. So I had already mentioned that a year in advance. And Myths of the Realm, way before the first one, way before Aglaya came out, I already said Myths of the Realm, Azure 24-man Tuesdays, Myths of the Realm. So we have those way in advance, like already we're talking about them. So in that light, I was already telling people that Monstrous Mondays was going to be Anima X, and and the other one, and well, look what happened. Mega Sisters, Mega Sisters X and Anima X, and neither of that happened for the first time in history. And we got surprised with 2 other much bigger primals, I guess you could say. But it was still a little bit weird, you know, like we're like, oh, well, maybe we'll defeat him and he'll come back as a big bad at some point. Nope, didn't happen. So, and in the Mega Sisters one, like, well, they're a tough dungeon boss. I'll give them that. Like, that's, you know, that's something. But I thought it was funny what they did with their names, because it's usually Sandy, Cindy, and Mindy, and it's Mindaruva, Sandaruva, and Cindaruva. So that was pretty funny too. Another 4 reference. So, real quick, funny quick story for the podcast and for you guys here about Ravana. Did you know that Soken was responsible for finding Ravana's voice? At least the one that the song portion of it, and they matched it with the Japanese one, and then they went kind of weird with the English one. But the funny thing was that you know, the song, after you get to phase 2, you don't really hear it today because we blow through it really fast.
Yep.
But if you go and actually listen to it, or you try to do it synced, you'll hear where he's talking about, you know, high on high I stand, gazing down to see the endless garden, you know, awaiting me, or something. And he's talking about, you know, being a primal, looking down on Aetheris or Hydaelyn, and all this other stuff that he says in the song. Well, that voice, the English voice, it's really super deep in that song.
Yeah.
It's this guy who is he's a real guy, and what was his name? I think his name was Tim, and he's from Localization.
You can call me
and
Tim.
and Tim from it might not have been Tim, it might have been like Joe. It was like a really simple, like, short name, but I think it was like Tim from Localization or something. And Soken told this whole story with Koji Fox at was like PAX 2016, I think it was, and it's in a panel. If you go to YouTube or Google Koji and Soken's Wild Ride panel at PAX, and that's the name of their Koji and Soken's Wild Ride, the panel at PAX, and you can watch the whole thing. He not only tells a story of how they found Tim from Localization, but also how they made the Metal and Locust songs for Alexander raids. And it's so funny because Soken was walking around their department, and he heard the guy talk, and his voice, he immediately wanted to hire him to be in the song. And the guy is this really big, tall guy, and he was really shy, and he has this super deep voice, and Soken's like, no, you must be a part of this song. And he's like, but I don't sing, you know. And he's like, well, we can do something that I've invented. And he pulls out this like machine that has a microphone attached to it that he carries around with him. He even brought it to the con, and he's like, God, this box is box of science.
This
box of science. And he's like,
I can see Soken saying like that.
He did. And he pulled it out, and he even had like a guitar with him too, and he starts like strumming on the guitar and then telling the guy what to say while holding the mic and this box of science. And they demonstrated it at the panel, so if you watch the video, you'll see Koji do the same thing with Soken. And they did it with the song Metal, and you know, seeking the peace of reason, like those, you know, that one, Locust and Metal, and the Brute Justice song, you know, before, you know, besides the Brute Justice version of it. So that song, right, that's Koji and Soken singing with Soken's science box, making their voices sound like that. And so he did that to their voice, and he turned some knobs on it. It was like this like freaking draconian looking box. It was so funny, and it was like this like old medieval box that had a mic and some wires attached, and it made them sound like that for those songs. And so at the PAX panel where he revealed his science, he got the crowd to sing Metal together, and you know, the song Metal from Alexander Raids, and oh my god, it was hilarious. And he was making people sound like the same voice that you hear in that song, because it's such a unique sound to it. And then of course Tim from Localization and the Ravana voice. So
Rika, I do have a question about I had this theory, and I wanted to hear your opinion.
Sure, what's that? Yeah.
Okay, so one of the songs in Alexander, and I can't remember which one it was right now. I can't remember if it was Locust or Metal. But one of them had some pretty strange lyrics about like the stars or whatever. or whatever.
Okay.
And since Alexander can hear, well, not hear, but like, you know, he's like the future boss thing that sees all of time or whatever. What if he saw the final, like what we dealt with in Walker?
Oh gosh, yeah. Like I
was
would like
giving
to
a
look at
sense of-
those lyrics. A lot of those songs from Alexander are supposed to be the goblins singing about them with Alexander. Like some of them, like the ones where the goblins chime in and say like "Gabi boom, Gabi doom," and then it's Alexander and the machines like singing too. It's so weird and cool and interesting at the same time. They made such an interesting soundtrack for the Heavensward Rates. But yeah, I have to look into that. That would be really interesting. I also thought it was awesome how small Shadowbringer spoiler, how that future timeline that just got cut off because they sent Graha. I said his name, and they sent him back back in time, but he came back too far and then in a reflection. So he came back 100 years too early and in a reflection. Because of Crystal Tower. And that goes with a recent interview that Yoshi P gave where he said, don't forget the Crystal Tower has time travel capabilities. So what if 7.0 is not even in a Reflection or Mericidia or the Rift? It's just back in time with the time of the Alligans. And we explore the old Mericidia before it got like wrecked. That would be crazy. That would be pretty crazy. And then what if we're responsible for the Alligans being gone? What if we blew up the Crystal Tower?
Oh yeah, it's
it caused the calamity.
It was Locust that I was talking about.
I just had an epiphany, guys. What if we were responsible for the calamity of Earth that overloaded the Crystal Tower and killed the Allegan Empire?
Oh god.
Ooh.
Because we're an Ashian, technically. Oh, what if that was us?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Okay,
So,
if I'm right, we're gonna like take this clip of the podcast and like send it to Square and be like, look, we guessed it.
Yeah.
Like
I will use this
we
clip as
have.
a trophy.
so Reika, the reason why I was saying one thing
it was
is
Locust?
because in Locust, it's like three lines with fragments in one direction, celestial noise detected, delirium unsuspected.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, what if it's hearing the end singer?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I always thought it was like detecting just us. We're warriors of light.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
I don't know. Like having the machines sing about us too was interesting. That and the goblins. I don't know. We haven't had Goblin tribe quests yet. That's another tribe quest we haven't had. Maybe we'll have Mamul-Ja tribe quests when we get to New World. Who knows? I don't know.
What about those one things?
One things?
I still think that Garleans are going to get their restoration probably because I feel really... Yeah,
Garlean restoration.
They're bad.
They're going to let Garlemald like burn in the snow for like 6 more years until they let us rebuild it. Just like Ishgard.
It's going to be it.
And then we'll get Garlean
all
housing.
over again.
Maybe Garlemald will... I don't know, maybe it'll become something new.
Chill out.
Oh, well, actually, no, the MSQ was actually going in the direction of trying to get the people alive now that were Garleans to build a new Garlemald society. And that's something that a certain judge was wanting, too, if you did the Baja storyline. He was wanting to build a new... Yeah, he was wanting to build a new Garlemald. What if he's alive? Actually, there's a field note that covers that. But they did mention something about his image being rumored to be an urban legend, like as like a shadow of what's his name, Gabranth, like the shadow of Gabranth is seen outside town sometimes or something like that. It's really creepy and interesting, and could easily maybe if they can rope Masano back into things. Please, Masano, please come back. We need you. We need you for an Elysian expansion. It would be amazing. And they could bring Akihiko Yoshida back from doing all the artwork over in whatever the crap he was doing, because he left for a while. Him and was it Kazuya Takahashi, and they went off to do FF16 stuff, and it's like, no, come back, your stuff was so good. Well, anyway,
I just remembered one other thing, and spoilers for the current raid here.
We're deep in spoiler territory now, so
yeah,
there's no going back.
You remember it? Rick, you run with Pandemonium Tuesdays every week, just about, right?
Yeah, I just swapped to late night to support the hosting issues we were having. Yeah.
Yeah. The last boss of the raid here says something that's very interesting to me.
I know where you're going with this. Are we talking about Ultima?
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay. The raid boss herself does say the line, you know, from the deepest like hells, the highest heavens, or whatever the crap, the incantation for Ultima. But there's that question that you can ask La Habrea if Ultima had ever encountered, or if Athena had ever encountered Ultima. And
I asked that.
That is a throwback to a very old theory that goes way back to the story of the Scions of Light and Darkness, which weirdly is I've only ever seen cataloged in the Brady Games FF12 English guide for the Espers. So if anyone listening here has that guide, go look at the Esper pages. It talks all about the names of the Ascians and what they did when they were Scions of Light and Darkness and all this. And it's like it covers this deep lore aspect where these guys had the different offices of the Ascians, that they had actually been heroes at one point, fighting against this Esper war during a famous point in FF history called Ultima's Rebellion, which has never truly existed like in any game or story, no media format, no novel, no nothing. We just hear pieces of it because Ultima, the High Seraph, was supposed to have been one of the original, like, you know, higher deities that had come from the realm of the gods, which we hear has collapsed in the deep lore, and that's where some of them went off to. And the High Seraph rebelled against the creation of Zodiark originally in the story that she's from with the 12 guide, which is part of the Barheim passage you hear about in 12, and it's something that Masano was trying to set up since the original tactics in the 90s, that she opposed the creation of Zodiark, who the god Zodiark, not the primal that the Ascians gave birth to, but the actual god that they worshipped, was in infant form, and that's the one you get in Final Fantasy 12. And it's an infant god that was put in place by deities that were too bored with mortals being the lowly creatures. They were waiting for them to ascend after millions of years. So they were like, well, we'll just put in like a synthetic god that we just made, and we'll go to sleep and let, you know, this Zodiark come to be and be the keeper of precepts, which was his subtitle, and or title or whatever. And that Zodiark was going to be like the god that the people of the world at that time, being the Amarosians and the others, would have saw as a god. So I don't really know what happened to that Zodiark, but in Ultima's Rebellion, she took a few of the other, you know, strong deities and some people that she blessed with powers to become Espers, because apparently becoming an Esper is also a type of divine blessing. And that's also what happened with FF6's lore with the Warring Triad, that they had actually had strong heroes that were blessed by the Triad, and they became Espers. And so there's something to do with, you know, high beings blessing people, turning them into Espers, and fighting their wars for them. And I know that Fandaniel was originally the Scion of Light who fought and destroyed Hashmal, or Hash Browns, the Hash Browns Esper, as we jokingly call him from the Rabanastre raid. But you know, and then what's interesting too is that when they made 14, they took the Ascians' glyphs, the red glyphs that float over their faces. Those glyphs are portions of the original Evolution Esper's crests. And so if you actually there's a book out there called the Final Fantasy XII Ultimania Omega volume. If you get that, there is a sheet that actually shows, and I don't know any other art book or anything in FF like media or printed media that shows this. That's the only book that I have in my collection that I think I have that I own that shows this. It's a clear sheet of the actual glyphs themselves in their full form. And you can see each one where a portion of it was cut out to be the Ascians' glyphs in 14. So in the Barheim passage story from 12, and in the Brady Games Guide's description of the Espers, along with what we know of the Ascians, if you combine all that together, you get this awesome little backstory where you hear about these guys that were the Amarosian Council or whatever, in all their different offices, like La Habrea and Lidibus and all them, and they were heroes fighting Ultima's Rebellion, and actually subjugated these Espers, destroyed them, and took their power and took their crests as their glyphs, which is pretty like badass if you ask me. So little lore bits like that tell these great stories that I would love to see as a game of their own. Could you imagine a game of its own spin-off of 14 playing as the Ashians in Ultima's War? That would be something. But I feel like Athena did get the Ultima Magic, or the Heart of Sabik, from Ultima the High Seraph. And once again, I got to chime in and say, there's a recent interview where Yoshi commented on that, because somebody asked him at a panel. I think I don't remember what the panel was. It might have been PAX. They asked him recently, what about the Heart of Sabik? Like, the Heart of Sabik is out there, and it's this magical stone that nobody really knows where it came from. And Athena had it and was using it for experiments and got the Ultima Magic from it. It was used to power weapons, like the Ultima weapon and such. And that stone was lost in time, and now it's owned by that one guy from the raids. So Yoshi had commented right before 6.4 came out, and he said, "You'll be hearing more about the Heart of Sabik soon." But I find it way too suspicious that there's just an NPC holding this magical divine stone that can do all these things, and that's the last we're going to hear from it. So, anywho, maybe the Heart of Sabik will be a focus in future expansion. That would be pretty interesting. What do you guys think?
Could definitely be fun.
Yeah. Honestly. There is so much
Deus Ex Machina expansion.
Yeah, we are nearing the 2-hour mark, actually, which it's been a really good time, so I don't mind editing it. But did you?
I'm sorry. Please put this in the video edit. I want to note to everyone here, at the beginning of this recording, Rika asked us to try not to hit the 2-hour mark, so she didn't have to edit an entire movie.
And here
We're
we
now
are.
at the 2-hour mark, and Rika's saying, "I love doing this for 2 hours."
Well, that's how it goes. We try to shoot for something, and then we end up having a lot of fun. So here we are.
Also, guys, don't forget to do your Aether robots.
But if I didn't say that, would we have hit 3 hours?
Oh my god.
Lord.
All right, you guys. Did you guys have anything else we want to talk about in the retrospective, or some predictions? Any final predictions there for this episode?
I hope that Xeno comes back.
Oh my god!
No!
You know what?
No!
Though there's a theory about that.
die.
Though there's a good theory, and I won't. I promise I won't get into a tangent. It's just the fact that they said that there's a minion of the NPCs that come out when their story is concluded. In the story, their minion comes out. There's no Xenos minion.
There's no Xenos minion.
There's no
yet.
Xenos minion yet. So maybe.
Listen, I have a Nerf gun, and I have more than 3 bullets. I will start shooting you all.
You're not a machinist. You're a paladin. Shut up.
All right, you
Paladins
guys.
don't have guns.
On that note,
The fact that this Nerf gun just misfired when you said that just killed me, by the
oh
way.
my god. Alrighty, and on that note, that will conclude this episode of the podcast. I do want to remind our listeners, we do have an awesome little comment section at the bottom of the video here on YouTube where our podcast episode is hosted. We would
Give us your thoughts!
really love to hear what you guys think about not only 14 in retrospective over the last 10 years, but also 7.0 predictions. Please give us those. We might even talk about it a little bit more on the next episode. We'll see. But we would still like to know and maybe chat about it in the comments with you guys. So let us know. And don't forget to check out AzureInfinitum.com, where you can register and participate in online activity at the website, earn Azure achievements, and more. Plus, we have an awesome Discord and social profiles. If you search Azure Infinitum, discord.gg/Azure Infinitum, and you can join us. Everybody is welcome in our community, whether you play the games that we're in or not. We have an awesome server for chatting and just looking for content and activity and other games that you might want to get into. Currently running a Destiny 2 clan that is
It is the solstice!
playing through the current season. We are recruiting always, so definitely hit us up about that. And of course, our FF14 free company in Final Fantasy XIV's Midgard Summer server for those who are not in our FC that might be listening. And with that, thank you all for coming to episode 23 now of the Azure Infinitum podcast. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.